Hi everyone, my name is Michelle Sen. I'm an aspiring therapist, and today I'm chatting again with my friend Kiki Attonito, who is a therapist. This time, we're going to discuss polyamory. Kiki, would you like to introduce yourself and your background working in this field?
Absolutely. So my name is Kiki Attonito. I have a master's degree in clinical psychology, and I am very blessed to have been identified as polyamorous. I have self-identified as polyamorous for almost 20 years now. And not only has this lifestyle informed my entire being in profound, beautiful ways, but it has become part of my counseling practice where if I have clients who are exploring the concepts of ethical non monogamy, it's something that I can speak with them about, not just from personal experience, but from many anecdotes in my community, as well as many books, research articles, studies, and just personal relationships I've had with people, both clients and in my personal life, to be able to impart wisdom as well as some fun guidance along the way.
That's amazing. So, you wrote this online article for Elephant Journal, which goes over Polyamory 101, and in it you mentioned that you found out about polyamory in 2002. When you found out about this concept, did you identify with it right away?
Sure, great question. Polyamory was not presented to me with that term. It was presented to me as the concept of an open relationship, which I have learned over time does differ from polyamory. And I'll get a little bit into the difference in the syntax there, but it is important to the lexicon. But it is important that we kind of know the terms when we discuss this particular realm. So at that particular point, I was in a relationship with a woman. I had been in a relationship for only a few months. It was relatively new, but we were very solid. We were going very strong. And she I had been aware that she had had a crush on a mutual friend of ours, a female. And it was like no big deal. This female was kind of acknowledged as very cute and likable in the community. And so it didn't seem like a big deal, but we were all going to a party together one night. And suddenly before the party, she says, I think we should have an open relationship. And I said, wait, what? And she said, yeah, it's the concept of being together and being solid and stable in who we are and what we bring to each other, our loyalty, in terms of our solidified primary relationship. However, being able to have sexual experiences with other people. So at that particular point, I believed that she had in mind that woman that she was interested in. And so I pushed back a little bit. I said, wait a minute, if you're looking for an easy way out or you just want to get out, we don't have to do this. She said, no, I'm in love with you. I want to be in this relationship. But there are other things out there that may be worth exploring. So at that particular point, I was always high O, always very high openness in my life. I believe also the fact that I had gone through coming out as a lesbian and had opened myself up to concepts of identity different from that which had been anticipated all my life. I heard this and I thought to myself, okay, you know what? I'm willing to give this a try. If it doesn't work, then this woman and this relationship is not for me. But the last thing I'd want to do is hold somebody back from something that they may experience. And who knows, I may learn something along the way about myself. So we went into that particular experience and nothing actually happened. I guess they flirted a little bit, but that was it. I think the other woman was just, it wasn't quite the situation. So we were at another gathering about a month later, and we always kept it on the table, but nothing really came of that conversation we'd had. And a conversation came up about somebody's interest in me and my opportunity to explore that. And so we kind of revisited it. And this person was a good friend of both of ours, very trustworthy. So she said, go for it. And that was my first experience. And it was incredible. I was able to make this profound, like kind of crushy, what I call NRE, which is new relationship energy connection with this amazing individual. And she had an experience of herself that night with someone else that wasn't, it was sort of moderate in comparison with what I experienced. But we both came home, we went to bed, and the next morning we woke up, we processed things as good lesbians do, and we actually decided that we felt really good about things. We felt really positive. We ended up seeing both these individuals soon thereafter in our lives, and everything was quote unquote normal. So we realized that this is truly a possibility for us. And at that particular point, I kind of embraced it. I went with identifying with in the fact that I have an open relationship. I'm non-monogamous, and it just I didn't question the label of it at that time. I was in my early 20s. I did come out as gay. I'd come out as bi, then gay. So, like I said, I think I was very comfortable with identity and it being a little bit malleable, playing with concepts, learning more about myself. And I just went for it. We were living in New York City. None of our friends really batted an eye. They just said, that's it. That's how they are. I think some people thought that, they identified that that was similar to where they were as well. Others, absolutely not. Monogamy was all for them. And so it just sort of sifted into my life at that time. Throughout that was 20 years ago, 2022. So from that time onward, every relationship that I was in was non-monogamous in the sense that I met people very often through the concept of non-monogamy, through a polyamorous community in which I became linked and ingrained a bit in that city, but also through a lot of openness on my part to experiences, to sharing that if there was somebody that we expressed interest in one another. Well, I do have a girlfriend, but we are open, and you can even meet my girlfriend, verify it for yourself if you want. So that kind of became a way of life. And at times that I was single, I began identifying as learning the term polyamorous later on. I began identifying as polyamorous just to give someone the knowledge going into a relationship with me that this is how I feel comfortable. This is what's become really comfortable with me. For me, will it be with everyone? I don't know. I have to explore that dynamic. But if this person is definitely looking for something monogamous, I always want to be 100% upfront.
So that is a bit of a summary about the relationships and the experiences that I've had. I've always been extremely open about who I am, how I present. I always want to be what you see is what you get. And I came to learn the term polyamory a little bit later, maybe about 2 years after identifying with open experiences. And I learned that in the term polyamory, the prefix poly means many or several, and the suffix amory is love, from Latin amor. So the concept is that while an open relationship may connote experiences with someone outside of the relationship of a sexual, romantic, dating nature, it doesn't embody the concept of a sexual nature. It doesn't embody the concept of romance and feeling. So with polyamory, what you would see is individuals actually being open to and experiencing potential love connections with other people, experiencing feelings for more than one person, not confined to just a physical act, to experience romance, to actually date as opposed to just, seeing each other here and there. So for me, I recognize that I am a very deep connector with individuals. So when involved with someone, depending on the person and depending on our chemistry, I love to be open to the possibility that it may be more than physical, and we may be able to explore an emotional, psychological, and romantic level together. And if we are both open to that in an ethical way, and both of our partners, if applicable, are open to that as well, I like to take that forward. So I began identifying as polyamorous to give somebody going into meeting me the knowledge that while this may not operate with every individual for me, it is something that I remain open to, and I don't want to present as, monogamous when that's not the way that I may turn out to feel most comfortable within that relationship. So that has always been really important to me, to identify as polyamorous. And that was 20 years ago.
Wow, that's such an incredible story. And I'm wondering, you did learn about this term 20 years ago, what being in an open relationship meant. Do you think that despite learning that term only at that point, that your whole life you had always been poly, in a sense?
That's a great question. So I like to believe that polyamory expresses itself in many ways in our lives, not just in romantic partners. We have love for multiple things on a very deep level. As many children are lucky to be born into a household with two parents who love them and they love, or more parents than that. But let's say two biological parents, for instance. Um, why is that not polyamorous? That is love for more than one person. I think that we tend to put and understandably a sexual connotation on it when we present identity wise. I wouldn't say to somebody I'm polyamorous because I like Zumba as well as yoga. It's I'll sometimes joke that
Yeah.
I'm a poly exerciser, but we definitely connote the love concept in society, but I do believe that some people can be programmed from early on to experience love for more than one person at a time. And I will just speak for myself that I believe that how it is and has expressed in my life has changed, but I believe that it's always been there. From the time that I was very young, I always engaged in very, very deep, profound conversations with people. I wasn't interested in surface or shallow, and I very often developed a healthy connection with people, a healthy attachment to the sense that we linked in quickly. I remember always having more than one best friend when I was little. And when we were young, I think we were in like fifth grade, we would rank order our best friends. Like, she's my first best friend and she's my second best friend. And at one point I had to make this neighborhood cat my best friend because I couldn't decide which of my best friends to put as number one. It was funny, but I've always been very diverse in that sense. I've always been an extremely curious person. I always want to know more. I always want to learn more. I'm very, very exploratory on a safe and ethical level. I always want to try everything. I went skydiving. I do a lot of bucket list items in life. And I love this. I'm proud of it. And it makes me feel like I'm living fully. So this to me, I would say both to come out as gay 20 years ago or over 20 years ago at this point, and to come out as polyamorous were not as common right now, as they are right now to identify with or to understand. And so I was willing to do that early, probably due to a lot of personality characteristics. I've always been very high level of openness to new experiences and opportunities. However, I've never been reckless or careless. And in fact, during the entire time that I was living in New York City, polyamorous for close to a decade, I never engaged in any use of alcohol or drugs. I didn't really stay out late. I held a full-time job and I had a few other side jobs as well. I was in school for part of the time. I always, so my life was very structured and orderly. My life was extremely high C, conscientious. But, with regard to my emotional life, I was so just open and willing to throw caution to the wind. I felt there was nothing to lose. As I've moved on in life, this hasn't changed about me. A little bit of my energy has, for sure, and definitely my ability to discern what might be worth that level of high O. But one thing I've never really wrapped my mind around is the concept of like somebody being our possession, or somebody being like, she's mine. I've never felt fully like somebody is mine, and I never really wanted to be someone else's either. Growing up as an only child, I was exposed to a lot of adult concepts and adult location, situations early on. I wasn't often left with babysitters. I was brought a lot of places and experienced a lot of things young. And I believe that I always felt like my own person. I always felt like an independent person. I never felt as though this is, I'm this. I'm also an only child, so I was never involved in a pair or in a group when I was young. I was a kind of intrepid only child in that sense. So I do wonder if this informed my deterrence from feeling like I want to have somebody, or they have me. Now well, I say that when you're in love, there's a wonderful feeling of connection, but I always wanted that to be organic. At one point, I didn't even want to get married because I didn't believe I needed any sort of title or any piece of paperwork. However, when gay marriage got legalized, I had to get married right away because I wanted to be the change I wanted to see, which was a lot more people getting married and nothing going wrong with the world. And yeah, I've always been a little bit uncomfortable with being this one and only to someone. That's not just about relationships. For instance, if my wife at this time, I've been married for 10 years, together for 14, poly the whole time. If she, said to me, you're my everything in the world. You are my it. I wouldn't want to be that. I like the fact that she has a wonderful job and wonderful friends and a wonderful family. And she has so many pursuits and goals outside of me. Just the same as if somebody says, you are the only person that I have capacity ever to be romantic or attracted to, I would feel a little bit fishbowl about that. That's not everyone, but that is how I operate. And I treat someone with the same respect. So somebody is definitely, they are special to me in the loyalty that I show. My heart is good. I'm what you see is what you get. But I wouldn't want anybody to be my one and only, because I think that they deserve so much. I wouldn't want to be anybody's one and only, because I think, or them to be mine, because I think they deserve so much more in a person than just this person being everything for them.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And you and your wife, how have you learned to communicate boundaries, rules, and agreements with her?
This is a great question, and this really applies to absolutely everyone. We have a long history together, but this would apply to someone who is just exploring polyamory at the outset. I would definitely say that for me, I had a very early indoctrination into really good communication when I was growing up. So my parents were very good communicators. I was always raised to express, to speak. And as I've grown up, I've just been a very, very honest person. What has differed as I've grown up is that when I was young, there were things that you talk about and things that you don't. And as I grew up, I really began to shed many layers of this and recognize that who says what we do talk about and what we don't. In fact, if we never talked about some of the things that parents told children, we don't speak about that, we wouldn't be where we are in the world right now in terms of individuals embracing identities and being able to work through really difficult situations because they are expressing trauma or sexual orientation or gender fluidity, etc. We need to be able to have a forum for these things. So for me, shedding many expectations of what I was supposed to share came later. However, my communication skills were early on ingrained. When I lived in New York City, I went from living in Manhattan to living in San Francisco to living in Miami. And I was very fortunate to have those three city living experiences. I also lived in Dublin, Ireland for a little while. I believe that our vibe attracts our tribe. So I probably put myself in urban areas throughout my 20s and 30s because that is what I sought. However, it also found me. And I discovered sex positive communities, very ethically, very educated individuals in the sex and kink worlds. I was able to really expand my mind and awareness around things and learn from educators, eventually become an educator. I also embraced the concept of yin yang because I had grown up very, very studious. And like I said, I'm very methodical, very meticulous. I hold 2 Ivy League degrees. I am an extremely hard worker and a diligent person in life. However, I recognize there are also these aspects of me that may seem unconventional or that may seem out there and don't quite fit in. And embracing the fact that I could be everything, or I could be all of, I would love to be everything, but that I could be both of those and still be embraced and loved and accepted for who I am became a huge part of who I am. I'll say that, yes, I was embraced, loved, and accepted, but one thing I always say is that if we are going to present something of ourselves, we should be confident and we present it. So instead of saying, by the way, I have to tell you something, I don't know what you're going to think, blah, blah, wait until you're ready to say to that person, here's who I am. And I'm proud of who I am. And one of my taglines is I'd rather be rejected for my truth than accepted for a lie. But I've had some really, really good results so far. I will say that. And so as far as communicating all boundaries and rules, it has everything. Everything has to be on the table. I believe everything should be on the table. What has not worked for me in polyamory is any level of omission. Like I said, going in to things right off the bat, saying, this is, trying to make sure that everybody is above board on things. It's really important to do that. Any sense of passive aggressiveness. So, well, I don't know if it's going to work for you, but it's important to be extremely clear. Say what you mean what you say. The first of the 4 agreements: be impeccable with your word. So somebody who is exploring polyamory or identifies as poly or is poly curious, I would suggest that there is an innate or embracing of full, just willingness to say what is crystal clear, no matter what the other person is coming at you with. I also don't, for me personally, the concept of the whole don't ask, don't tell, like maybe not saying something unless it it's asked, and it's not being asked because maybe that person knows but doesn't want to know. I don't find this to be effective at all. I'm very much for open and honest communication, of course, respectful of everyone, and any potential hypothetical vagueness. So just, in the situation that I blah, 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 what do you think? And then leaving it open-ended, because if partners are going to enter into, an agreement or understanding of this, things need to be extremely clear for both of them. This takes a lot of experience. It takes trial and error. And of course, it's very individual to the couple or the polycule, as we'll say about multiple people that are together itself or themselves.
What about someone who thinks they're poly? How can they explore having a poly relationship?
This is a great question, because I think that more and more individuals are at this particular point realizing that embracing something outside of perhaps the norms is open to them or is potentially accessible. So what I would say the first thing to do is, whether you're single or coupled, it's important to be open to diverse social experiences, because especially with what's happened in the last year with the pandemic, but also our culture has become more and more online. Now, my polyamorous experiences didn't take place over the internet. I would say that the majority of this happened before Facebook was not even a gleam, and so MySpace wasn't even a gleam yet. So this was, like I said, it happened so organically in my life. And at this particular point in my life, it's certainly possible to meet people online, but what it does dilute a bit is the sense of the organic nature of this, as opposed to, I think this is a good idea. Are you really feeling this? Did you meet somebody who piques your interest? And this is just something that happens to come up. So definitely being open to going out and being extroverted, and in the right situations, of course, and being social, because I do believe that that is part of what will show somebody whether this is possible for them, and also allow them to experience the feedback from another person in real time. I believe that it's important to discuss this openly with people. So for me, if I were not out about being polyamorous, I can tell you that I definitely wouldn't have met many of the people I've met, because I've been at social occasions where it's come up in conversation. And because of that conversation, perhaps the person I'm talking to says something, and then we discuss something, or they introduce me to someone, or so the social network has been a big part of it, as kind of like a network of people. And if individuals are going to date online, I always suggest, and they identify as polyamorous or open or ethically non-monogamous is kind of the umbrella term we're using right now, to be ethically non-monogamous. I do suggest they put it in a dating profile right off the bat. I've had many friends, many experiences with individuals who believe that if it's indicated, it'll come up, and what's indicated is not always keeping the person on the other end of that profile in mind. So I do think that full disclosure is important. Now, that being said, full disclosure can also meet with matches or interest from people who are not interested in the same types of things, and that's okay. That's how we weed people out. So if somebody is coupled, and they want to explore poly, I would definitely suggest that they approach the partner gently about it. I think it's good to talk about these things. There are some segues into speaking about polyamory. So as opposed to just, hey, do you want to try this? Which was done to me. I would say that a potential lead in, first of all, you want to be in a good time and place and potentially cite someone like, hey, my friend Kiki, did you know that she's polyamorous? Yeah, they've been together a while, but this is how it is. Oh no, it's not just that they, have sex, or it is just that they do this. And to kind of, and then just see where the partner is on it, just see how they are. Um, I think another thing to do would be to um, provide some resources. So I provide all of my clients with lots of different resources. I'll name some resources that are out there, and I'm always happy to talk with people more. But I would suggest that first they might familiarize themselves with the resource, and then potentially present it to their partner as, let's just think about it. Like, we don't have to do anything, but what's the harm in just learning something? So one of the resources is a website called morethan2.com. It's all about ethical non-monogamy. There is a wonderful book called The Ethical Slut. It is by an author named Dossie, Easton, Easton. It is the Bible of polyamory. I got it way back, and I was lucky enough to meet Dossie in 2008. I got her autograph and everything. She's a wonderful speaker, very, very erudite, scholarly. There is a wonderful book also called Polyamory, Attachment, Trauma, and Consensual Non-Monogamy. This is a book by Jessica Fern, Fern. I read parts of that. I've not read the entire book, but I know from people in the poly community that they really enjoy it. There's a wonderful show that was on Netflix a couple of years ago, which is free. It is called Wanderlust, and it stars two married individuals who decide that they're going to explore open relationships. And then the concept of polyamory actually enters its way in. There's also a great comedy movie called Seeing Other People that I saw in the theater ages ago. And I'm sure there are many more resources than this, but even just watching a movie with a partner and trying to sort of assess where they are, I think that this could be a wonderful segue in.
Thank you for providing that variety of resources. I love how there's both the movies, the Netflix, and then also the very academic sources.
Yeah, when I work with clients, I first of all, like, I assess where the client is. I have clients who go from anywhere from being experienced in polyamory to, they're in their first relationship that they're exploring polyamory and have started, to never explored but interested. So, and there's many nuances in there. So I will present clients with the resources that might be best suited to them in particular. And one thing I'm always very clear on with clients is this is not, there's nothing promotional about this lifestyle. There's nothing better about polyamory. There's nothing better about monogamy. There's no need to label. We use labels for the purpose of identification, and that is important insofar as everyone with whom we interact is 100% upfront about what we're doing, and everything is ethical and honest. However, if the person has a session with me and they say, this is not for me, okay, it's not for you. You want to talk about something else next week? Like, it's all good. We all have to just honor who we are.
Right, exactly. And I'll definitely put a link in the video description to all these amazing resources you mentioned. Now, one of our mutual friends wants to know more about polyamory from the EP perspective. And she says that, quote, in my experience, it feels like a modern feminist trap, that I somehow should want this and be excited about it because the times allow it. What are your thoughts about this, Kiki?
Sure. Great question. Well, first of all, just because we can do something doesn't mean we have to do it, or doesn't mean that we do it. I think there are a lot of permissions that we have in this world at this point. I mean, at one point our society was in prohibition. At one point we weren't able to get married to a same-sex couple. So just because alcohol is legal now over drinking age, and just because gay marriage is legal, does not mean that every person is going to want to go and buy alcohol, and that every person is going to want to get married. And I think just because things are available does not mean that we need to embrace them. Yes, it's hard for a high open person, but I think it's important to recognize that we only have so much time in the day, and we only have so many energetic resources. So to thine own self be true. I love learning from people who are as different from me as I actually furthermore enjoy learning from people who are different from me and have really different lives and interests, because I know it's not something that is right for me or that I'll be experiencing. And so like, let's help each other get this level of knowledge. It's like, I'm an English major, living with a biochem major. Like, let's talk about we study. I'm not going to learn this from my other English major classmates. So the friend's question, if she believes that this is a modern feminist trap, in the sense that this can empower men to have sexual, romantic, et cetera, relations with other people, what I would say from that sense is it's important always to remember that just because your partner wants something or suggests something or propose something, if it is not 100% matched by your own desire, do not do it. Resentment is like drinking poison and hoping the other person dies. Like, it's setting up for misery. So like I said, with my first experience, I was ready for the consequences when I went into that. So this is about both of you. Everybody's 50% in a relationship. And I would also say, be the change you want to see with your partner. So if you're a woman and you feel like this concept of polyamory is like empowering men, well, it's also empowering women. So how might it be empowering you as well? We might talk about spreading the seed in terms of one particular cisgender sex. However, when it comes to females, we still have the same abilities if we're truly poly. So in terms of getting out there, if it's a trap in the sense that it could potentially then empower women, what I would say, to try and be more feminist or try to take advantage of something, what I would say to this individual is the fact that you ask this question suggests that it would suggest to me, if I were your counselor, that this is not really something that you want to do, but you might feel like, should I, and only you can answer that question. But what I would say is, from the question itself, I would suspect that it might not be the right time or place for you whatsoever. Always go with your gut. Things will reveal themselves in time, but remember that things may get more permissive, but that doesn't mean that our own values or ideas or what we know is good for us has to change whatsoever.
And along this evolutionary perspective and thinking about behavioral genetics, do you think a certain personality type tends toward being poly?
Yes. So it's funny, this question has come up a few times, and I have to say that I believe that a high level of openness, and I say that because the ability to get to, like I was saying, to go out, to make organic connections, but also to embrace ideas and concepts that are non-traditional or that may not fit in with society. I've written letters to Facebook about the fact that when they have single, coupled in a relationship, it's complicated. How about like in a relationship with, and then you can list more than one person, because once you're linked to a person, you're closed off of options. So, I like being open to new ideas and being part of the influence I would love to see in creating new ideas. The person who is willing to reach out to a therapist who specializes in polyamory, the person who is willing to say to a friend, I'm willing to explore this, or to say to a partner, let's check out this movie together. When it comes to conscientiousness, I definitely believe that there can be a spectrum of conscientiousness. So somebody could be extremely conscientious or on the lower scale. The one thing that I would advise conscientiousness with would be to execute things well. So I have many poly friends. I have a very large polyamorous community here in South Florida that I've cultivated over a long time, but and in New York. But they have shared Google calendars, literally with each partner, and then each partner has a calendar with their own partner. So, if that's applicable, of course, it can get complicated, but it doesn't have to be. We can be talking about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 people, however many. But your ability to denote time, to set aside particular, times and make that person feel special. That's really, really important when it comes to being able to navigate this relationship and not to be careless in other people's feelings and other people's expectations, etc. I would also say that a high level of extroversion, and that really does touch on what I spoke about with getting out there in many ways. Somebody who's introverted may be willing to get out there in ways online, but I think that this really needs to be pedal to the metal if someone's really interested. And again, if they're not, that's all good, but if this is something that they really think about living, I think that it would be important. I myself personally would not be comfortable being involved with somebody who is closeted poly, meaning that if they this was something that they were not willing to tell anyone in their lives that I had a wife. That's if that's what works for them, I do not disrespect that whatsoever, but it wouldn't work for me. Just like if I wouldn't date somebody who's closeted gay, because I need to be able to live my life fully openly. And so somebody to be able to see my profile online and see, oh yeah, your girlfriend isn't cheating on you. She actually is married. A mid to high level of agreeableness. And I say this because someone who's relatively disagreeable, I believe that they'll tend to overthink and overanalyze these concepts and get to a point where they almost back themselves into a corner. I have many disagreeable poly friends, I will tell you that. And they are fascinating. Individuals with whom to have a lot of really intellectual and emotionally charged discussions, even debates, just getting into things. But I do find that they tend to have a little bit of a more difficult a challenge to navigate meeting and making organic connections, because that disagreeability can be off-putting at first for somebody coming into this. And because individuals on this lifestyle, we tend to be here because we actually are happy, like we actually like it this way. So there tends to be a relative level of just joy that a person is seeking this lifestyle to bring to them. Again, you don't want to be too high agreeable, because if a partner or if somebody says, I think this would be a great idea. Like, let's be polyamorous, okay, like, great, whatever you say, it sounds like a great idea. Let's do it. I definitely don't think that that's the type of person that we would want to do this. I think this has to come from themselves. So let's go with like a mid to high-ish A there. And then regarding neuroticism, my gut instinct when someone first asked me that was, oh, you have to be low because there's no way you'll handle the emotional fluctuations, et cetera. And then I realized that early into my polyamorous, experiences and journey, I was higher end than I am now. I'm fairly low end at this point, but that's come from a lot of years and experience and age. But many individuals with whom I'm involved have been high end and are still high end, with whom I'm friends. And so I would say there's definitely a spectrum of neurosis out there. Now, neurosis can be defined as various different things in terms of the kind of neurotic overthinking type of overanalyzing thing. That to me can definitely be part of this, because somebody can be drawn to this lifestyle who does tend to think about these things like, wow, where is monogamy from? Like, why are we monogamous? Why do we have these social norms in place? Why shouldn't I challenge that? But somebody who is too high, unstable, level N, when it comes to the definition of neurotic, that goes on the lines of emotional stability, somebody who is too low in emotional stability I believe would have an extremely challenging time with this lifestyle, because it does require a level of maturity, wisdom, and emotional intelligence to navigate fluctuations of emotion, interest that happen amongst multiple people, not, and then yourself. So, and then you have to think about yourself. So, yeah, I would say that I've definitely seen a spectrum of N. I've seen extremely high neurotic people, and I've definitely seen very, low neurotic people. And I would say that this will depend on the pair bonds, the matches, the connections themselves. And there's nothing superior about any of the big five or any personality trait than another. There is what's right for us. But because due to these personality traits, there are certain aspects of life that we might find ourselves in more, and that may resonate with us more than with others.
What's the biggest thing that you learned during your work in the poly field?
I would say the biggest thing I've learned in my work with the poly field is that while the terminology may have changed, like I said, I came into this with the word open relationship. And at this particular stage of the game, what's really being widely used is ENM, for ethical non-monogamy. I go into a lot more terms in my article as well that individuals can explore, but that has changed, right? And then the other thing that I felt has changed is like social awareness of this, because when I became polyamorous, it was just something I kind of did. And I feel like I didn't really have to make any big announcements. But as I got older and as I experienced life, I recognized that, okay, it is important to identify, to be able to let people know what they're getting into, to be ethical to myself and others, to recognize who I really am. And alongside this, fortunately, society has changed in many ways. We have many different identifications. If I see an intake form for a doctor's office that says gender and only gives male and female, I'm like shocked, because I'm just like, what day and age are you living in? We've come such a long way in terms of our progression with recognizing the totality of individuals beyond just certain labels. And so I have observed that polyamory is much more spoken about now. Does that mean it's right for everyone? Absolutely not. So just because somebody can check off non-binary on a doctor's list does not mean that a person who is a cisgender female and identifies as such, should feel like, oh my gosh, I want to like be part, like no, that's who you are. So just because polyamory is discussed or open relationships are out there, that doesn't mean that's who you are. So it's important to know who you are. But just because these things have changed with time, the principles remain the same. The principles of honesty, the principles of communication, the principles of ethics, and really coming at this from a sense that this isn't a game. It's not a game to play with emotions or play with people's lives. Is it a lot of fun? Oh, yes, it's a ton of fun. And I am so grateful for what I've learned in this lifestyle. There are many pitfalls along the way. I've had many hard knocks and rude awakenings. It is not easy. There are many people who have said, it's just not for me. And that's okay. It's not easy at all to navigate this. But, that being said, the core remains the same.
Right. And what do you wish that the poly clients you counsel could know?
Yeah, I love working with polyamorous clients on any particular, spectrum. The first thing I really want them to know is, and it probably sounds cliche at this point, but communication is just so key. Communication has to be really good. I do couples therapy for many clients, right? Polyamorous, monogamous, you name it, everything in between. And it is amazing how we can be, and I say we because I'm a human being, we can believe we're communicating something so clearly and that we're being so upfront about something, and the other person is hearing something entirely different. So really making sure that what you're said is being heard, and that what you are hearing is actually what's being said. So to clarify, to communicate, not to hold things in, not to hold back, everything comes out one way or another. Any feelings stuffed down, they ultimately come out anyway. So I think it's important to get those on the table. The other thing I really just want them to know is if this journey is part of yours, if it is intended to be, it'll enrich you in many, many ways. It'll enrich your life in so many ways. And there are ways in monogamous lives that enrich those individuals that I will never experience, because that has not been the life that I've led. However, I know that in my life, it is extremely enriching. And so I would always say to someone, be open to the beautiful bewilderment of what you can learn.
I love that so much. being in a state of bewilderment, which is something you mentioned in our first interview, and I still think about that. So you've had so much experience in the poly world. What are some of the most positive experiences you've had working in it?
Yeah, I've had some wonderfully positive experiences. I would say that I've been able to provide education, creating platforms for clients. So I have not just clients, friends, community. I've conducted community workshops at large events. I have been a speaker on this topic. I was invited to speak in I had an intern working for me at a mental health clinic, and I was invited to speak in his human sexuality class on the topic of polyamory. So I was invited to speak for that. I've been invited to do interviews and to read articles. I have been the admin of a large poly local group for close to 8 years at this point, and I have organized events, mixers, both from a social level to an educational standpoint with people. I really enjoy hosting groups and being able to facilitate a conversation for those interested. I love being able to normalize this lifestyle, to be able to say that this could be somebody next to you. It's not, it's not this, it's not as out there, or if it is, that's okay. Let's just learn about it. I really like to be able to work across cultures with individuals, to be able to see this permeate break so many boundaries in terms of diversity. I'll talk about that in a few minutes. But I really just love seeing honesty developed between partners. I've had wonderful counseling sessions where the person's like, I think I'll tell her this, but I'm just like I'm not ready for this. And I'm like, I think you need to tell her it all. And then they do it and they're like, oh my gosh, I feel so much better. So I've been able to see great honesty with people. And when I say that, by the way, my caveat is I don't tell clients what to do. I recommend, and whatever they do is, it's all good. Um, I think it's just as important to know polyamory is not for you as it is for you, just as important. And I've also had the beautiful experience of seeing other poly coaches emerge. So I actually, in my poly group right now, I have some friends working as poly coaches, and it's cool because we can refer each other people based on location, based on demographic. Um, a couple examples of, I mentioned diversity in clients. So I've worked with clients across sexual orientations, and particularly sexual orientations in which perhaps gender norms cultures in which gender norms are highly part of society, meaning arranged marriages, meaning man, woman is what is recognized, meaning your family will not recognize you if this is not the way that it's done. Children are had. And so, I've talked with clients, in these realms who are potentially not only not particularly interested in what their culture is prescribing, but maybe of a different sexual proclivity, and even potentially want to explore things with another sex or gender. So with individuals like this, we've had some great conversations about how potentially ethical pair bonds can be entered into when everyone is in agreement and everyone is willing. And then other arrangements can be made. And do these arrangements need to be broadcast across a large family? Not necessarily. I believe that what these individuals decide amongst themselves is what works, as long as it's between the both of them, or amongst all of them. I've worked with clients who are very young. And at this particular point, it's interesting because more and more young individuals are identifying as gender fluid and non-monogamous. And some of them have come to me saying, I'm not sure if this is who I really am, that this is who I'm going to be growing up. When I was younger, this wasn't the norm for us. And so I had the example of I tried to be straight for so long, and then was just like, this is not who I am, as opposed to being able to explore a whole lot of things and then saying, so which one does fit? So kind of just navigating with them, what feels right, what's not feeling right, and let's just see where it goes. I also had a great experience working with a woman who was actively cheating on her husband. And she had brought up the concept of non-monogamy. And when we started to get into what it would take, she was not willing. She said, no, that's just, no, I'd rather, this is just easier. It's just easier. And I would say that over the course of a year of working together, it's gotten to the point where she has begun to break boundaries and has begun to put things in place. And we begun to work on the fact that any relationship that is based on, a dishonesty is probably not the relationship for her anyway. And so it may take making a decision of leaving or staying, so that's what we're working on. But everyone is on their own journey. And I love to be able to help along the way.
Yes, and I can tell you're very experienced in helping people navigate all sorts of relationships. So for people who want relationship coaching, Kiki.
Thank you.
Is there anything else you want to add about polyamory in general, your experiences?
Yeah. So I would say that, what comes to mind first and foremost is any relationships we're in involve more than one person. I'm in a relationship with myself, but like any friendship, any acquaintanceship or colleague or interaction in romantic, sexual relationships, all of them, if there are two of us, we're 50%. If there are three of us, we're 30%. So it's important to remember that everyone else is just as influential to us as we are to them, and that there's no way that we can truly, when it comes to a relationship, there's nothing we can really govern without the presence of an actual other human person there, unless we're meeting that person with that person. So every relationship is going to have its own dynamic. That's what's most important to remember. So just because this worked for one person, or this person does this, or this is what this person says in a book, not only who are you, but who is this other person that you're with, and what works for the both of you? What love languages do you speak, for instance? It's important to be respectful of everyone involved. And I do believe in operating with karma always. If somebody that I'm working with is holding something back from their partner, no, I am in no judgment zone whatsoever. But what I will say is always be aware that the same thing could be being done to you. And what I'll often hear is that's not possible. They're like totally honest. Like, well, they think you are right now. And so they may be saying this to a therapist. And so to just be aware of the concept of karma, I think it makes us better people in general. And like I say, no judgment. We all make the decisions we make that make most sense to us in life. There's no right or wrong or good or bad. There's what makes sense. Sometimes we withhold things and later on we feel guilty. Sometimes we don't feel guilty and we continue to withhold them. We have to do our own journeys, but to remember the power of karma, not keeping double standards. So for couples, it's really important that even if one person wants to act on this, for instance, and the other person wants to sit back and lie low for a bit, the person who's lying low does have the opportunity to act like that if they want to, if that is what the other partner is doing, of course, with all of their rules and agreements in place. But I do not believe that double standards work well in this lifestyle whatsoever. Even if somebody says you can do that, let's just make sure that at least the rules apply to everyone, whether they take advantage of it or not. And if that doesn't work for the couple, they can discuss that. But I do think that it should be a hypothetical question. And I believe, like I said, in setting the tone to take this seriously. So when discussing polyamory, when discussing ethical monogamy, open relationships, et cetera, like just speaking about it in a serious, intellectual, emotionally intelligent, well thought out manner, and being the change we want to see. Most of all, Michelle, I continue to learn so much in this community, and so much about who I am and where I am and how this all fits. But the number one thing for any individual is to enjoy the learning, but always be true to yourself.
Thank you for all those wise words. What you said about having no double standards, keeping the relationship open, being honest, that is also applicable to any type of relation. Honestly, not even romantic. It's just a great way to conduct oneself for life. I'm just continually blown away by all your insights, your huge breadth of experiences. Again, anyone can contact Kiki through her email, kikiattonito@protonmail.com. I will drop that in the video description too. She is, as I'm sure you can all tell by now, just a lovely woman who just, again, so broad, everything that you're in the eating disorder field, in the working in polyamory too, and such a non-judgmental therapist and counselor and leader of how to operate in life overall. Like you're writing an eating disorder manual right now, but you could just write a whole life manual pretty much about how to conduct oneself.
I know, right? I have a high C, but I haven't yet written the book. It's interesting. So, Michelle, I just want to say the same back to you. You are outstanding in everything that you do, and you truly are a role model for me in so many ways. So it's a beautiful connection and community that we speak to.
Thank you. It's always a delight to converse with you and continue inspiring each other. I can't wait for the next time we chat.
Absolutely. It'll be another wonderful chat.
You can contact Kiki Attonito at kikiattonito@protonmail.com. I've also included the link in the video description. Also, you can find out more about my work on my website, michellesen.com. That's michellesen.com. You can subscribe to my newsletter there too. Thank you so much, and I'll see you around.